Today, we're emphasizing hip extension. So we just did all this work to improve hip extension. We're gonna use hip extension on one leg. So we're stabilizing in hip extension and we're isometrically holding hip extension on one leg while we go through our hip car on our other leg. And we're gonna be working for it. So what that's gonna look like. So we're gonna come down into this position here. Many of you will know a glute bridge, right? So when you do your glute bridge, I want you guys to keep this really honest. I don't want this, okay? So we're borrowing a lot from our spine. I would honestly prefer that your hips are actually a little bit lower and you're just getting it totally from your low back. It's the opposite of what I want. Totally from your hip and none from your low back versus being really high and getting a lot from your low back, right? And then we see a good percentage of that activity or that work happening being done in your lumbar spine versus your hip. I want to try and isolate this to your hip as best you can. So even if you're not totally at end range, again, I would allow that, or I'd be more okay with that than you being too far and then getting a lot of lumbar activity here. So we're going to try and isolate that as best we can. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up in a glute bridge position here. Feet are about hip width apart, toes are straight-ish ahead. Doesn't need to be perfect. We're going to press up through both feet into a glute bridge. Okay, so this is a position many of you are going to be familiar with. You're driving both feet down into the ground to propel your hips upward, okay? Now we're going to try and sustain that position. You're going to try your best not to let your pelvis do this, okay? So notice how my left pelvis dropped there. I'm going to try and keep my pelvis or my hips level here, which is going to be very challenging, but we're going to do our best with it. And then what we're going to do is we drive our right leg through the earth. We're going to get lighter and lighter on our left foot, and then we're actually going to come all the way up as far as you can into hip flexion while still driving through that other leg. Then you're going to open up to the side. Then you're going to spin your thigh inwards and almost reach that foot for the ground, but don't let the ground support it. You're just grazing the ground. You're bringing that leg back around in front. Then you're going to bring it back to the side as far as you can. You're going to bring it back, knee into chest. And then you're going to place it back down under you. Little reset. Press through both hips. Try to get yourself as level as you can. You're doing great here. We've got one more rep. Nice and slow though. Now you know what we're doing. Big breath in. Good breath out. Find your abs. Don't lose them. And then knee's going to come up. You're going to open up to the side. You're going to spin that leg inwards. Find the ground if you can, but just graze the ground. And then keep grazing the ground as you come back out to the side. Bring your leg back up and then back down to the ground. Very good. Whew. Now we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. So I will flip around for us here. Now your left leg has to work to maintain hip extension the whole time as best you can. Again, doesn't need to be perfect. We've got 2 nice slow reps. We're only doing 2 instead of 3 like we did at the start because these ones are much harder than the version we did at the start of class. And then we're going to wrap it up from there. So good breath in, good breath out. I like to find my obliques before I pop up. And now just resume normal breathing, but don't lose those obliques. Press up through both legs, and then you're going to take as much weight through your left leg as you can. Try not to let this pelvis drop. I like to press through my elbows here. Knee's going to come up into hip flexion. We're going to open up to the side, spin that leg, reach down, find the ground. Now we're just grazing the floor through hip extension, staying in hip extension, coming back out to the side. Bring it back up, back down, place it back down on the ground. Little reset, pressing through both feet. Make sure your pelvis is level. We've got one more here. Drive through that left foot. Knee comes up into your chest. Open up to the side. Spiral down. Come through. Then back out you go. And up. Through hip flexion. Back down. And you should feel a good burn on those glutes.